Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be doing a review roundup. It's been a little bit of time since I've done a review roundup with this many movies in the same video, and as the title would suggest, I'm going to review a few movies in this one video, but I usually do these in a bit of a smaller format, so I won't spend too much time on each movie. But these are some movies I wanted to catch up on as we near the end of 2024. It's been a blast talking about all the good movies and bad movies of 2024. It's been a great time talking with all of you guys about the movies that you guys agree with me with or disagree with me with. And today we're going to be talking about 4 movies that I've been really excited to catch up on that I had heard a lot about in different directions online. So without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on the first movie we're going to be talking about today, and that is a film called Anora, which is written and directed by Sean Baker and stars people like Mikey Madison, as well as people like Mark Eidelstein, Anton Bitter, Paul Wiseman, and many more. And going into this movie, I had heard so much, people claiming this is one of the best movies of 2024. I remember seeing the marketing for it, thinking it looks like a good time. It's coming from the studio Neon, and I kept hearing nothing but praise for Mikey Madison as the lead character of Annie. The base premise of this film is it follows a stripper who finds herself in a relationship that starts to build with somebody who's paying for a little bit more private time, this young Russian kid known as Ivan. Over the course of time, they eventually decide to get married, and this ends up going completely haywire as she immediately is confronted by the family and the individuals who work for this kid's family, as she learns that this kid is part of a huge rich family and they want nothing to do with her being married to him. So they try to get the marriage annulled. And over the course of the film, some crazy things start to play out. I won't say much more for those of you like myself who haven't gotten around to it just yet. What I can say about Anora immediately that is definitely true is that Mikey Madison is phenomenal in this movie. I really enjoyed her when I was first introduced to her in the first of the newer Scream films, the 5th film in the franchise. I thought she was pretty solid in that movie, and I hadn't really seen her in anything else outside of that. This is my second film that I've seen her in, and I gotta say she gave an incredible performance here. Definitely a career-defining performance. I definitely foresee a very big future for her moving forward, and I'm happy to say I enjoyed the film. I thought it was beautifully shot. The performances across the board were really solid. There's some characters in the mix that I found myself really surprised that I enjoyed as much as I did, but there's also a lot of unlikable characters, including the character of Ivan, the new husband to Anora. And so overall, what I can say about this film is it's a film that has a lot to say about taking control of your own life. It's a film that has a lot to say about chasing a better life despite adversity. And I think for the most part, it's a film that on a filmmaking level is incredibly well made. I will say though that I do think it's a little overhyped. I thought it was a very good movie. I really enjoyed it. I could see myself watching it again, but I don't necessarily know if I would give it the masterpiece title that many people are giving. There's an area in the middle section and the area near the end where I felt like we meandered ever so slightly, but for the most part, the filmmaking and the performances really kept me engaged throughout the entirety of it, making it feel like a very realistic and oftentimes very funny story that is also very tragic as well. It's definitely a film I recommend, but I will say that if you're not really comfortable with a lot of nudity and sex in movies, this is probably not your movie. But for the most part, if you're looking for a different kind of film, something that feels original and different from all the franchise movies that come out, Anora is definitely worth your time. Moving on now, let's get into another film that I've been really wanting to talk about, and that is a film called Conclave, which is directed by Edward Berger, written by Peter Strahan, and based on a book by Robert Harris. It stars people like Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and many more. And this is a film that also I had heard tons of as we were getting into the later part of the year. It's probably one of those films that's going to be in the contention for a lot of awards during award season as we get into the Oscars and all that different stuff. I think when it comes down to performances and production value, the look, the feel, the vibe of the film, the cinematography, the very eerie score that plays underneath the film, this is an incredibly well-crafted film. But it is a film that may turn some people off because of its pacing and also because of the subject matter. The base premise of this film is it centers on the fact that the Pope has just died, and now there must be a conclave that's put together, a group of sequestered cardinals that are going to kind of come to a decision on who the new pope should be. The person who is kind of tasked with running this whole conclave is Ralph Fiennes' character, the character of Dean Lawrence. And over the course of the film, he kind of starts to uncover some scandals and some kind of, sketchy stuff that's going on behind the scenes between some of the candidates who are going up for pope. And it becomes this race of who's going to become the pope, who desires it the most, who deserves it the most, and who is trying to cheat their way to the top. What I can say about this film is I think it's incredibly well made and certainly worth your time, and I think that Ralph Fiennes gives one of the best performances of his career here. I think that for the most part, he continually showcases year after year whenever he does movies why he's one of the most beloved actors and one of the most prestigious actors in the world of film. And I think that he gives an incredible performance here with other actors like Stanley Tucci and John Lithgow also giving incredible performances. And I say across the board that the performances are incredibly solid for all of the cast members in the film. On top of that, as I already mentioned, when it comes down to the wardrobe, the locations used, the cinematography, this is just an incredibly well-crafted film. I can say on my own personal opinion that I don't necessarily know that I love the ending. I saw what they were going for and I appreciated it, but I don't necessarily know if it was the ending that made it feel like a very satisfying story by the time we got to the end. But what I can say is the film is riddled with drama and all kinds of different things that happen in the middle section of the film as we lead up to the finale that kept me incredibly engaged. I never found myself bored, but I can say the film is a little slow at times. Overall, I think this is a very solid film that's certainly worth your time if you're looking, again, kind of like Anora, for something incredibly different, though those two films are wildly different in and of themselves. But this is definitely one of those films that feels like it was made for the Oscar season. And so if you're not into a little bit slower, more drawn out stories that are kind of going to take their time with character and feel like it's more about the artistry than it is maybe an overly fast-paced, compelling story, then this may not be for you. But I do think this is a really solid watch that many people are going to enjoy. Moving on now to a film that's the most recent one I saw in this batch, and that is the film Cuckoo, which also comes from Neon and is written and directed by Tillman Singer and stars people like Hunter Schafer, Jessica Henwick, Dan Stevens. And so going into this film, I was pretty excited as well. This is one I saw the trailers for over the course of months and never got around to seeing it in theaters. I really wanted to, but Neon sent me a digital screener to check out in the later half of this year. So I decided, all right, finally I have it at home. Let me check it out. Let me see if I like this film. I had heard a lot of mixed bag things about it. Some people calling it mediocre, some people saying it's a surprise hit in the horror world. And I can start this off by saying that I thought it was a good time. I found myself really enjoying this film, and a huge reason behind that is Hunter Schafer as the lead character of Gretchen. The base premise of this one is that after Gretchen's mother passed away, she's now moving in with her father, but her father, his now wife, and their daughter are actually moving to Germany to help kind of build some new pieces to a resort. And so she ends up kind of getting dragged to Germany now when she's living in the States. She's dragged away from all her friends and what she does back home. She's a musician. She's not really happy. Her mother's passed away. She wants to be at her home that she grew up in with her mother back in the States, but is slowly starting to uncover in this new German resort that she's living at now that things aren't necessarily as they seem. There seems to be something sketchy going on behind the scenes, specifically to the women. And I won't say much more there, but what I can say about this film is that it's a film that builds intrigue as time goes on. I think that characters played by like Dan Stevens give you that great sense of, should I trust them? Should I not trust them? There's a lot of characters like that over the course of the film. And I think that Hunter Schafer as the center character, I thought she did a great job. I thought the performance was great there. For the most part, she's the one that you're rooting for. She does a good job of getting you to root for her character. She's a very awkward and eclectic character at times, but she's also somebody that you can feel for in terms of when it comes down to the grief she's going through for the mother passing away, as well as a lot of the struggles that she deals with in this movie, and just feeling like she's the forgotten child where her father is now more preoccupied with his new daughter that's part of his new marriage. For the most part, I think the performances are solid here, and there's a pretty intriguing, bizarre premise that plays out over the course of the film. Now, the movie is a little bit weird, and it does play with certain things that leave you confused at times. I think for the most part, all of those things are resolved really well by the time you get to the end of the film, and it does come to kind of an end that has a nice bow on top, but it is the kind of film that may turn some people off because of how strange and bizarre it can be at times. But for the most part, I actually found myself really engaged. There was a couple of moments that were a little bit slow, a couple of things I would have liked to have had expanded upon a little bit more, especially around the big reveals in the later part of the film. But for the most part, I think for a straightforward horror film that kind of utilizes just a few locations, I thought that the locations and the scenery was really nice to look at, which only added to the aesthetic of this film. And for the most part, again, Hunter Schafer really just carries this movie, and I really enjoyed the ride. I enjoyed seeing where it went. I don't think it's a film that everybody's gonna love based on the response I've already seen online, but it's a film that I do think is way better than mediocre. I think it's a pretty solid film in the current day of thrillers and horror films. It does something a little bit different. It is a little bit predictable at times, but it's certainly a film that I find myself enjoying and a film that I can definitely recommend to other people to check out. Will you love it? I guess that depends, because I have seen some different opinions online, but I found myself enjoying it, and I think it's definitely worth your time if you're a horror or thriller fan who wants something a little bit different, even if it is a little conventional at times. And then the last film we're going to be talking about is the film that I got an early screener for earlier this year, but didn't check it out until now when I got sent another screener to check it out. And that film is called Hundreds of Beavers, which is written and directed by Mike Cheslick, and also stars and is written by Ryland Brixton Cole-Tews, and stars people like Doug Manchesky and Olivia Graves as well. And this is an incredibly bonkers film. It's one that I heard so much about, and this is actually a film that started premiering in film festivals back in 2022, but wouldn't end up getting distribution for a limited theatrical release until this year, as well as eventually being released this year on VOD platforms for rental and purchase. And I had heard so much about this film, and the best way that it was described to me and that I can describe it to you is that this is essentially live action Looney Tunes. If you're a fan of very ridiculous, silly, slapstick humor, then I think you're really going to enjoy Hundreds of Beavers. It instantly kind of became one of my most favorite films that I've seen this year, because it easily is one of the most unique films I've probably ever seen in my life, and easily the most unique film I've seen this year. The film focuses on Ryland Brixton Cole-Tews' character, Gene Kayak, who is an Applejack salesman who in the 19th century ends up finding himself completely alone in the snow in the middle of the woods, and now must try to find a way to survive. Over the course of the film, he comes across a bunch of woodland creatures that are all showcased in the film as being people that are in costumes, essentially like mascot costumes, something that's a little bit lower than a level of a theme park character, but higher than something like a Party City outfit. And yeah, over the course of the film, he starts capturing these creatures or trying to kill them so that he can sell them off to a nearby merchant who will give him in things that he's able to continually grow and be able to survive in the woods, and kind of be able to get more kills of these beavers and various woodland creatures so he can bring back and he can get more stuff. So that's pretty much what this film is. In a lot of ways, it kind of pulls from like a video game kind of strategy, where you find that merchant who's like, hey, bring me this, I'll give you that. And so over the course of the film, we just see him trying to capture these woodland creatures. It's not really a film with a really straightforward narrative. There is very little dialogue in this film. Most of it is kind of treated like those old school Lego games where the characters are like, everything is kind of just miming, and a lot of grunts and moans and noises, a lot of screams as well. And for the most part, it's a film that you would probably think, well, that sounds stupid. How could that be an hour and 50 movie? But it really works, honestly. I will say it meandered a little bit in the middle, and I was kind of like, all right, where could they go with this? I was thinking to myself, is this really going to be a feature length kind of thing after about 20-30 minutes? But as time went on and new kind of challenges kind of face in front of the character, as the character starts to learn about new things he can do that he wasn't doing earlier in the film, while it's super silly, super stupid, and just indulgent and just being ridiculous, it's a film that I honestly found myself appreciating more and more and more and more and more as the film got to the end. And by the time we get to the finale, it was just so entertaining. It knew what it was, and it's incredibly creative. This is the kind of film that isn't using a huge budget to do incredible special effects or incredible green screen. It wants to look as dumb and as silly as it can. It's a film that's just kind of making itself a live action cartoon in so many ways. The humor can be redundant at times, but honestly, a lot of times that redundant humor was funny, and I found myself kind of like just cracking at the film, just thinking, I can't believe that they really went for this and they committed to it in a way. But by the time you get to the end, it feels like the scale of the film has grown quite a bit, and you have this character who was just kind of this idiot at the beginning of the film who becomes more and more clever in terms of how to capture these various woodland creatures over the course of the film. And of course, as the title suggests, Hundreds of Beavers are a huge part of this film, because the beavers are the main things he's trying to capture, and there's tons of beavers that he ends up kind of getting into a bunch of fights with, and it's kind of really hilarious. You know, you have this guy in this live action cartoon fighting off these beavers that are people in suits that are like tripping over themselves, and it's just kind of ridiculous. There's no way to get around it other than saying it's ridiculous. I don't know if this is a film that's going to work for everybody, but if you go on IMDb and some other places or Letterboxd, it's got a pretty solid score for the most part. And I think it's because most people just see the movie like this and think this is original, this is weird, this is different. It may not be for everybody, but it's a film that truly tried to do something different. And again, without a doubt, is the most unique and most interesting film that I saw this year, but without a doubt is easily one of the most unique films I've seen in my entire life. I don't think there's anything else I can think of that is exactly like this film. I think in a world where people are constantly complaining about franchises or IPs that are giving us the same things over and over again, and then people go and see those movies and don't support films like this, I certainly think that Hundreds of Beavers is worth your time. It's on streaming. I think it's even on a couple of streaming platforms where you can watch it for free with ads. I certainly think it's worth your time. And for the most part, I'll say that I really think all of these films are worth your time for different things. If you're looking for something really spicy and different, Anora is definitely there. If you're looking for something a little bit more dramatic and serious, if you like a good, more realistic tale, something like Conclave will work for you. If you want kind of a weird, mysterious kind of horror tale with a nice thriller element to it, Cuckoo is the way to go. And if you're looking for something just slapstick, silly, and dumb, then Hundreds of Beavers is what to do. These are 4 films I'm happy to highly recommend. I didn't know when I was planning this video if I was going to be like, okay, here's the good one, here's the bad one, here's the okay one. Honestly, I really enjoyed all these films in a lot of their own ways. I think that these are really strong films with fun performances, really solid and realistic performances, great special effects, great cinematography, or just fat out silly commitment to what they are. Certainly films I recommend, and that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. Big thanks to you guys for watching. I don't know how many more videos I have in me before we get to the end of 2024 with the holidays and all that jazz, but if you're watching this before Christmas, well, Merry Christmas, and if you're watching this after Christmas or into the new year, well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But yeah, I'm going to try to cram in at least one more video before the year is out. But a big thanks to all of you guys for watching this long review roundup today. And have you seen any of these movies? Or did you like them? Did you not like them? Where did you land on them? I think that these films all have divisive elements for sure. And if you haven't checked out a specific film in here, which one are you most excited to check out now? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.